So we're talking about who you can marry if you're a Kohen. And if you were a Kohen in the time of the Mishnah, certainly we said that you would check back about 4 generations into the lineage of your wife's family to make sure that she's not a halal. She doesn't come from a family, from a halal, from a priest who's disqualified to serve. Maybe from the union of a high priest and a widow, for example. But we don't always have to do that, because if you've already been checked, so to speak, or if there's evidence, if your wife's family, your prospective wife's family is already known to be okay, you don't have to check. And the Mishnah then goes, so the Mishnah explains, Ein bodkin lo min hamizbeach ulamalan. We don't check from the altar upwards. What does that mean? I think that means that if we can see that you're engaged, the woman you want to marry, if you can see her father's already serving in the temple, well, you don't have to check back any further. You can see that he's kasher. And similarly, velo mina duchen, and not from the duchen. Interesting. We talk now about duchening, about blessing. We use the expression duchening for blessing the people in the Beit Knesset, in the shul, but it seems like they're already using this expression in the time of the Mishnah. So if we see that a priest is going up to bless the people, then we don't have to check back. Velo mina Sanhedrin lumala, and not from the Sanhedrin and upwards. That's interesting. It sounds like at some point, if you were a member of the Sanhedrin, you were of priestly lineage. This is really interesting. At one point, in the Mishnah, there's a suggestion that the Kohanim had their own Sanhedrin, which was different. Obviously, people just by Kohanim, which was different from the Sanhedrin run by the regular kind of Talmidei Chachamim. Oh, shehochzaku avotav shotrei harabim v'gabei tzedakah. So it goes beyond this. Anyone whose fathers were established to have been shotrei harabim, public officers, or gabei tzedakah, charity collectors, masein likuna, they can marry into the priesthood. So we don't have to check. If your prospective bride comes from one of those families, we don't have to check her out either. Eino tzarich livdok achareihem. We don't have to check after them. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Af mi shehaya chatzum ed ba'archei yeshana shel tzipurin. Rabbi Yossi says even someone who was signed as a witness, in other words, whose signature appears as a witness in the old Bet Din of Tzipori. Really interesting. Well, you can go to Tzipori today. You can see the mosaics. It's up in the Galil. Really important rabbinic center. So it seems like they had an important Bet Dinner, and they used to write down, they used to get people to witness documents, and the name obviously would appear on the witnessing. But if you were one of those who witnessed documents in the court, you were kasher, and your daughter could marry a priest. Rabbi Hanania ben Antigonus, Omer, Rabbi Hanania ben Antigonus says, Af mishaya muchtav be'istartia shel Elimelech. Rabbi Hanania ben Antigonus says, even someone who was recorded in the king's list of the officers, and you might wonder who this is, but in Divrei Hayamim, actually, chapter 7, we have there's this whole list of genealogies there, different tribes. And it's very interesting that that whole chapter finishes. So I've skipped straight to the end of the chapter. It's verse 40. It's right at the end. I didn't want to go through the whole chapter is full of genealogy. And it ends, Ve'hit yachsam batzava bamilchama. The number who had yachas, who had yichus, I suppose we'd say in Yiddish. Ve'hit yachsam batzava. The number who essentially related to their connections, by their genealogical connections, bamilchama, in the war. Misparam anashim esrim v'shisha aleph. So there were 26,000 of them. We seems to like we got 26,000 people whose genealogy was checked, whose genealogy we knew about. And Rabbi Hanina ben Antigona says, look, if you're listed there, then that's okay. We don't have to check you. Now, why do we need to check? Well, the Mishnah explains, but halal zachar psula min hakuna l'ulam. The daughter of a halal, that is, a halal is someone who has basically violated the terms of his kuna. So, for example, the daughter of the high priest who's married a widow. But halal zachar psula min hakuna l'ulam. So the daughter of the high priest who's married a widow is going to be unfit for the priesthood forever. And when we're saying forever here, the Mishnah is actually thinking about the male son. The male son of the high priest who marries a widow is also a halal. So his daughter would be unable to marry a Kohen. And if he had a son, his son's daughter, i.e. his granddaughter, would be unable to marry a Kohen. In other words, the status in terms of kahuna seems to go through the male line. We've already said, by the way, that status for Kohanim goes through the male line, but it seems as if the status of a halal, of someone who's unfit for kahuna, also goes through the male line, because it doesn't work the other way around. Yisrael shenasa halala. If an Israelite, just an ordinary guy, marries a halala, marries, let's say, this daughter of the Kohen Gadol who was married to the widow. So they have a daughter rather than a son. Okay, she can't marry a Kohen, but if she marries a Yisrael, bitok sherali kuna, his daughter is fit for the priesthood. Interesting that we talk about his daughter and not her daughter, but his daughter's status comes from him. As far as marrying into the priesthood is concerned, the status seems to come from the father, not the mother. And it works the other way too. V'chalal shenasa bat Israel bitop sulamina kuna. If a halal, a male halal, marries the daughter of an Israelite, his daughter is unfit for the priesthood. The status goes through the man. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but ger zachar kavat halal zachar. Really interesting. Rabbi Yehuda says the daughter of a male convert is like the daughter of a male halal. And halakha doesn't go according to Rabbi Yehuda. But it's really interesting to see that in those days, the halakha on gerim wasn't quite as it is today. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is going to explain this a bit more. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Yisrael shenasa gioret bitok sherei lakuna. An Israelite marries a female convert. His daughter is fit for the priesthood, because as we've said, the status goes through the father. V'ger shenasa bat Yisrael bitok sherei kuna. V'ger shenasa bat Yisrael bitok sherei kuna. Actually, we're going to apply the same rule to a male convert marrying the daughter of an Israelite. His daughter is fit for the priesthood. But now we're going to repeat the halacha of Rabbi Yossi. Aval ger shenasa gioret bitop sulamin hakuna. If a male convert marries a female convert, if two converts get married, their daughter is unfit for the priesthood. Bitop sulamin hakuna. Their daughter can't marry a kohen. And we're going to observe echad gerim ve'echad avadim. Converts are just like freed slaves. A freed slave is not, a slave is not fully Jewish. So a freed slave is not considered fully Jewish. Echad gerim ve'echad avadim meshuchrarim. Filu ad asara dorot, even to 10 generations. Ad shetehei imo mi-Yisrael, until his mother is of Israel. So we do come back to female lineage here. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Af ger shenasa gioret bitok sherali kuna. Rabbi Yossi says even if a male convert does marry a female convert, his daughter is fit. And b'di'evet, so to speak, after marriage, the halacha does go like that. So in other words, that we tell them not to get married, but if in practice they do get married, then in other words, we begin by following Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. But if they do get married and they have a child, then the daughter is indeed fit for the priesthood, according to Rabbi Yossi.